Today we're going to go through the causes of the Great Depression. So remember that Hoover had won a victory. He was competent, but he now had the worst luck as a president. He was, remember, truly a progressive. He was still actually today rated pretty high by historians, even though he had the worst economy. But in the fall of 1929, the stock market is going to crash. It's important to remember in all of this that the depression was not caused by the crash. The crash was a signal of what was to come. So right now we're experiencing a bull market. This is when the market is booming and doing very well. This is the good market. On the opposite end of that is the bear market. So this is the slow market, and this is what's going to cause the market crash. So take a look at your buying on the margin handout as we're going through this. So in the 1928, 1929, we're in the boom market, but on October 24th, 1929, after a month of wild up and downs, there was an unprecedented volume of selling. The next day, after stock prices had plunged, J.P. Morgan Jr. and all his millionaire buddies tried to help the economy by going down to Wall Street and putting in millions and millions of dollars. But by noon, they'd actually run out of money, and within 2 days, the stocks were going to fall 22%. So again, October 29th, the stocks keep plunging. It's actually going to take until 1951 to get the stocks back up to the way they were before the Depression. So look at your buying on the margin handout again. It's because of this speculation and buying on the margin that we get into this mess. So flip it over now to look at the causes of the Great Depression sheet. And as we're doing all of this, again, remember, the stock market crash is not the cause of the depression, but a sign of what is to come. The first problem is going to be weak spots in the economy. Remember, farmers were already in trouble. They were already in their own depression, and due to overproduction, high debt, and low prices. Remember, the farmers were making too much. They had gone into high debt, partially because they couldn't sell all of their goods, also because they were forced to mechanize their farms. And they also are selling at low prices because there is too much of farming goods. We also have a weak spot in the textile industry. Due to global competition of textiles, there is going to be universally low wages in that industry, so it was really hurting. And finally, we have coal mining. As oil became more popular, coal mining becomes less lucrative. Our next problem is going to be maldistribution of income. This is going to become a big problem because 60% of Americans were making less than $2,000 a year, and 8% of people had most of the wealth. In order to have a healthy economy, you needed that amount of money spread out between the wealthy, the middle class, and the poor. We also have the next cause, which is the overextension of credit. Remember, we have a consumer culture that had been booming in the 1920s, and the media said basically you have to have all this stuff, and people get ridiculously into debt. Buy now, pay later, and that installment plan was part of the problem. Next, we're going to have overproduction. So, since we're a consumer society that demands all of this stuff, we're going to have to expand things and hire new people, and then we're going to end up with extra goods, okay? But the problem is no one can buy the stuff, and we have too much stuff, so the only answer would be to cut production, and that means firing people. And that means there is a decrease in income. This is a chain reaction that spirals into effects, and the ripple effect takes everyone else down. So the unemployment from this overproduction due to our extension of credit and consumer society is having a big backlash. So here we have a little diagram explaining what's going on. So first, we have lack of government regulation. That means businesses controlled its own production. So remember, we've broken away in the 1920s from government regulation. The presidents haven't been enforcing trust legislation or antitrust legislation. And because of this, businesses are going to produce more goods to make more money. And then consumers have no money to buy excess goods once the market falls. And without consumers purchasing goods, businesses begin to lay off workers who then have no money to purchase the goods. We also have poor economic intelligence. Basically, this is the first time in history that this has happened, and our best educated people don't actually know how to solve it. We have very poor judgment throughout this entire crisis. We also have excessively high tariffs. So remember, in the 1920s, again, there was little government regulation of business, and the tariffs had been put in place, or they'd stayed in place to protect U.S. industries, but they're going to hurt farmers and international trade. And in 1930, the Smoot-Hawley tariff was passed, and it raised the tariff even higher. The idea was that it was going to free up money for investment so if we increase the tariff, it was going to free up money to invest in businesses, and that the rich people would keep investing in businesses. But the problem was there were no businesses to invest in, and the tariff goes from 32 to 40%. And this increase is going to really hurt the economy. There were actually over 1,000 economists who urged Hoover not to veto the Smoot-Hawley tariff, but he didn't do it. We also have a problem with the Federal Reserve. So this would be a good time to take out your Federal Reserve handout to refresh yourself about what the Federal Reserve does. But there's a problem. After the crash, the Fed raises the rates. So by doing this, it means that the local banks would have to pay a higher rate, and they don't want to pay a higher rate, so they're going to charge consumers the difference. And the result of that is that it makes loans more expensive for people to take out at the moment that they needed loans the most. It becomes hard for businesses to continue and for consumers to spend money. By 1932, 30% of the population is unemployed and another 20% is underemployed. It didn't just happen to poor people, it affects everyone. The only group that manages to escape pretty well off was the military. The army wasn't taking people, but people who were already in it had pretty good paychecks. However, with that one exception, it impacts people straight across the board.